Please, madam. Thank you ever so much. All right, I'm gonna shut up now. Take it away, Sam.
All right, let me just share my screen here real quick and we'll get going. All right, so welcome everyone. Today we are going to talk about 4 new features that are going to be coming out here in the new year. So I wanted to give you guys a bit of a preview as we're getting ready to start rolling things out in the next few weeks or so. But yeah, my name is Sam Mugalava. I'm a product manager on our Confluence content experience team. So content experience works mostly with the editor and creators, anything that has to do with the creation process. And so excited to share some features that are coming up related to creation and creators. So just a quick agenda. We just did the welcome and intros. I'm going to walk you guys through 4 features today, and then at the end, we'll leave some time for some Q&A. So before we go into the 4 features, I want to just introduce the concept of fearless creation to you all. So fearless creation is a huge initiative that is happening over a 2-year period that our team and me specifically are focusing on. And the goal of fearless creation really is to just help foster a more welcoming environment for early stages of creation in Confluence. So think like note-taking, unpolished works, drafts, things like that. We want to be able to make that just a better experience within Confluence. So we are focused on helping creators shelter unpolished, messy work, giving individuals a risk-free place to be creative, and then also providing creators with more transparency and control over the publishing and creation process. So the 4 features I'm going to show you today are part of this fearless creation initiative. And really excited to kind of feature some of these guys for you. So we'll talk about 4 features. We have a save indicator, making drafts more findable, page status, and table visualization. So we'll go through these one by one, and hopefully you guys will also participate in a live poll as we go through each feature. So hopefully get some engagement from you guys about that. So let's start with a save indicator. So this is the first poll. So I will drop the link in here to the Slido, and the code is this. And let me, I realized that I need to put this on my other screen. All right, so go ahead and start the quiz. Hopefully you guys are in there and able to join. So the question is all around, how do you think content is saved in Confluence today? And the results are in. We got 60% said nothing, and we had click save was 17%, and no one else chose the other options. So you guys are proving that you truly are power users, because you're right, you don't have to do anything. However, many creators in Confluence believe that they have to click publish to save work or take some kind of action. So when they're in the editor, they just don't feel super confident that content is being saved all the time. And what we find is that people usually click publish on average around 3 times per editing session, just as like kind of a way to feel confident and secure that that content is stable and saved. And so this is a problem that we want to address with a pretty small but very mighty feature that will be coming out. And so I'll go ahead and play this video. You can notice up here is the save indicator. So as you type or you make a change onto the page, you'll notice that it starts to say saving. And then on the keystroke, it pushes save or says saved. So this is something that, is pretty common in a lot of editors. There's nothing like super revolutionary here, but it's something that we know has been able to like give people a lot more confidence that they just can always see that that content is saved. And if you hover over the word saved, you can see the timestamp for when it was last saved as well. which is super, super helpful. So that's the first feature, getting started with something very small. Now we'll move on to a bigger chunk. So findable drafts. So we have another poll for you guys. So the question is, where can you find drafts in Confluence today? So if you can go back in, can vote on where you can find drafts. All right, the results are in. We had 14% say page tree and recents, and we had 86% say recents and home. And recents and home is the correct answer. However, with that, with things being just in recents, which is like in the top nav of Confluence, and in the homepage, a lot of people actually don't know that those drafts exist there. And people find that drafts are really hard to find, and creators are just unsure if they're saved. They kind of push close or close the tab and it gets lost in the abyss of Confluence. So one interesting stat for you is that 75% of drafts in production today are blank, and they're all really old. And so I think that points very heavily towards, you open up the draft, you close it, maybe you decide you don't want to write anything with it. And technically that draft is actually saved in Confluence and you could go find it. But those drafts are hard to find and people don't really know how to go back to them. So what we are working on is bringing drafts into more places. So this first is a screenshot. To go through. So this is drafts coming into the page tree. So with this feature, when you close a draft or close the tab or leave the draft in any way, that draft will actually appear in context in the page tree. So it's in a very familiar place. You can see where it is in the hierarchy of your page tree. And it's really easy to go back and find that draft again. So that's one place that we're adding drafts. A second place is within blog tree. So the same thing for blogs, you'll be able to see those blog drafts, which I think is great too, because if you are, especially, putting together a blog and you want to collaborate with someone else, a blog is definitely broadcasting things out. So it's a great way for you to be able to kind of collaborate in that blog state with a draft and easily find it there again.
Sam, we have a quick question. Will the draft in the page tree only be visible to the user, to me?
Yes. So drafts are only visible to the creator of the draft, or if you've shared that draft and they have the collaborator has actually opened the draft and they see it in the editor, like they've interacted with it, then it will become visible in their page tree as well. But they maintain like that privacy from the beginning. Cool. Any other questions so far in the chat? I think we're good. You're on mute, Mandy, if you are reading something out loud to me.
Sorry, no, I was reading the chat out loud to myself.
Okay. All right, cool. All right, so the third place that we are adding drafts is also in page cards. So if you click pages within the page tree of the space, you get these page cards. You can change the view into like lists or these cards, and drafts will also start to appear here. Along with on home, you can kind of change some of the views around to have these cards as well. And drafts will also appear there for these page cards. And then the last place is they will continue to live in recents under the drafts tab in the dropdown. So you'll be able to go back and find them still in all the familiar places if you do happen to know where drafts are today. So a couple things is I want to give you a little bit more of the definition of what a blank draft is in our mind, because this starts to come into play with how we're cleaning up drafts and making this like a great experience where you're not going to have a graveyard of old drafts that you don't need anymore in your page tree or all over your Confluence instance. So the definition for a blank draft is the draft doesn't have a title, no body, you haven't added an emoji in the title or a cover photo, and you haven't made any restrictions changes. So if all those things are true, you have a blank draft. And going forward, if you were to abandon the draft, either by closing the tab, pushing the back button, the breadcrumbs as well, or pushing close, this draft will actually be discarded. And there will be tooltips that can kind of help guide you with that process. So if you were to hover over close, it'll say like discard draft. But if you had added any type of content or made any of these changes, that tooltip will say something like, save your draft is saved, and you can close it. So that's a bit of the definition of the blank drafts. We are, going forward, we're trying to help kind of clean up the draft state of things in production. So I've pulled a lot of data, and I think we're in a good place when we launch that the drafts that you're going to start to see across your instance are going to be relevant. They're going to be things that you actually are still intend to work on. And we'll be able to kind of keep that page tree clean with the ability to kind of just close out these blank drafts and discard them moving forward. Cool. Any questions about that?
Maybe just a question related to drafts.
Yep.
But I often experience more like when I close a draft, I land on the home page instead of the page I've created the draft from. If you're looking at that as well. Yeah.
Yes, we are. That's a good call out. So if you close a draft today, you're right, it takes you to home. It's pretty disorienting. You're losing your context and everything. So also with this feature change that we're making is when you close that draft, you will land back on the parent page of wherever you were creating that to kind of keep you within context of that space. You don't have to navigate around all the time. Cool. All right. So we're moving much quicker than expected. So we'll talk about page status. So this is one of my favorite features coming up. So the question in the poll is, have you ever used WIP in your title, work in progress, to make sure that the page, people know the page isn't polished? No right or wrong answer. This is just a bit of a poll to see how you guys title your content. All right. So we landed on 67% said yes, 33% said no, and you are not alone, I will say. We have found, if internally, I have done this search where if I search for WIP, it shows you like how many results match that. And when I did this maybe 6 months ago or so, there were like over 40,000 results. People do this all the time. We call this title stuffing. And so we see people, adding that to help just set the expectations for others that are coming in to view your content. I don't know about you guys, but there's nothing worse in my mind when a page isn't done and someone comes in, thinks it's done, starts commenting or like trying to take things out of that and start doing them. It's like very disorienting and just not a great experience. So I also use WIP in my titles a lot, sometimes multiple times, to really add emphasis there. So we find people do that for kind of the document status. For our knowledge management customers, there's no easy way today in the product to be able to show what is something that is outdated versus the source of truth. And so, you could have multiple versions of your employee handbook or some other type of manual or knowledge-based content within Confluence. And, you might not want to delete those things or like remove them. And so being able to add a status to that is something that would be very helpful for those types of customers. And then the last kind of problem this is addressing is that we find that people who have to have like an approval process or a specific workflow that a page goes through or a document goes through, that they waste a lot of time and energy just kind of going through these repetitive tasks to manage content across their Confluence instance. And so one feature that is also being added on to page status is the ability to set up workflows and automation. That is being built by another internal team here at Confluence on top of the feature that we're building. But I think it's something that a lot of people will really appreciate, to be able to kind of save some of that time and not have to go through that process for every single page. So those are some of the pain points that we're addressing. And now show you a bit of a demo. So page status is really creators being able to add, remove, and change out of the box or custom page statuses. So there will be 3 page statuses that are kind of like a default suggested that are based off of a lot of feedback from customers, but I actually would love to hear from you guys as well, how some of these defaults land with you. And then users also have the ability to create a custom status on a page and reuse those over and over again. So I'll show you how this works. So pretty quick, I'll play this and pause on a certain screen here. So let's pause here. So here you can see that you can set either a custom status here, and you can select a color that you want to associate that status with, and then type anything that you want into here. Or these are the suggested statuses that kind of come out of the box. So we have rough draft, in progress, and ready for review. And so I will show you some of the admin settings that we are also building into this feature, where you can adjust these things on a per space level. But this is just kind of a slowed down version of the options for adding a page status. So you can go in and click them. It appears here on the page in the editor, and then that status is also visible on the view page. Next slide. So the view page status, this is just a screenshot of that, but really what our intention here was to have something that's pretty eye-catching and is something that's like at the top of the page. It's something that before you start reading, you see this. And so this is intended really to just guide people who are coming in to collaborate on your page, or someone who's coming in to view your page, to know when and how to interact with the page the right way. So it's for the viewers, but it's also for the creator of that page, because like I said earlier, there's nothing worse than the feeling of seeing comments on a page that you're not ready for comments for. So that is the view page status. Any questions there before I go into the admin settings with this?
I do have a question. I'll just ask it now. It might be more related to the admin settings, but just seeing this, I love this. The docs team we have will love this. Are there any plans for sort of linking this through with Jira Service Management's knowledge base, so that you can filter based on a particular page status, so that, like right now, we're using 2 different page trees for them to put published content in? Yeah, so it's not in the MVP, but we are building extensibility into this. So there is an endpoint that third-party apps can build on top of this feature, but also our internal teams can also build on this as well. Building that actual integration with other Atlassian tools at the beginning is not part of the MVP, but it is something that's the vision for like the next version of this, is thinking about how do we connect these things a bit more, especially around the part around searching on a per status basis. So that's something that we really debated back and forth, whether or not that should be an MVP feature or not. But it just started to get a bit complex, and we felt like being able to get this out in people's hands was probably worth it, as we kind of figure out a bit more of the complexity around searching on a status, especially for things like custom statuses. It seems easy on the surface, but when you really start thinking about it, there's a lot of things that can go wrong that you have to kind of think through a lot of those edge cases. Yeah, I totally get that. Thank you.
Yep. Cool. All right. So, oh yeah, this is a closer look at, so what happens after you create a custom status, or after you've used some of these default statuses. So what you saw the first time was just the defaults and the ability to add a custom status. Once you start using the feature, these move into having a recently used list as well. So creators will also be able to see like the 3 most recently viewed or view page stat, 3 most recently used page statuses, that should not say viewed, to help you like go really quickly. Like, so if you use kind of the same ones over and over and over again, you can just have those handy and are able to use those very quickly. So definitely design more on like the power user kind of standpoint there. All right, so the admin settings. So space admins are going to be able to kind of have some control of these features. So you can either guide creators through like a specific, content creation lifecycle by changing out those default settings. So the rough draft, in progress, ready for review. You can also change whether or not people even have the feature on a specific space. So if for some reason you wouldn't want page statuses to be available for a certain space on your site, but you want it for other spaces, the space admin has the ability to turn on and off the feature. And then you also have the ability to actually like trash these and create your own. So you can create up to 5 statuses that will then show as those defaults in that space. And you can also turn off the ability for people in the space to create custom statuses. So if you want to control that process a bit more and just have them use the defaults, you'll be able to turn on and off a lot of these features to really customize it to fit your workflows within the space. Any questions on that?
Maybe just a follow-up question, like more on like, if we have statuses, do you plan to go further than to like do some special activity based on the status, kind of freeze the page, it's not allowed to edit or something like that?
Yeah. So that's where the automation piece comes into play. I think the first bit of automation that our other team within Confluence is building on top of this feature is workflows specifically. So if you wanted to go through an approval process, I think that's the first use case that they're building out. But I think as we have people start to use the feature, and especially people start to use the automation tools and get more feedback, I think that will help guide us figure out what are those other types of workflows that people want to be able to build on top of this feature. Did you have something specific in mind that you'd like to be able to do?
Not yet, but yeah, I kind of see like we're building apps all around that content creation, publishing workflow. And so I think that's quite interesting then also for us in the end.
Yeah, cool. Very cool. All right, so moving into our 4th and final feature. I tried to save the best for last, and I hope you feel the same way. So the question in the poll is, how do you add a graph or chart in Confluence today? And this is not like what ability do you have, but more personally, like if you were to add a chart or a graph into Confluence, how do you do it out of these options? Maybe you do something else than what was listed here. All right, results are in. Whew. Got a couple things switching back and forth in the last second. So about half of you, 43%, said you use a third-party app. And then 29% was split each way with copy and paste from Google Sheets or copy and paste from Excel. So 29% each, which, yeah, sounds about what I would have expected. Some of the pain points that we are trying to address more natively is around being able to, visualize that table data that you have within Confluence. And things that we have heard from customers is that, you often have to leave Confluence to be able to work with large data sets. So you're going to want to work with that data in Excel or Google Sheets. But then you have to go through this process of creating a chart in one of those tools, then maybe taking a screenshot or copying and pasting, and then uploading an image from those external tools into Confluence. And so that context switching back and forth and having to use those things is really, hard and not the best experience. Also, just on the visual communication side of things. So, there's just no super easy way to visualize and aggregate data as charts or diagrams in Confluence today. And we know that that's something that's really important because, if you, I don't know about you, but if you land on a page that has a ton of data on it, that is a bit overwhelming as someone who didn't create that data or create that page. And so being able to make something really easy to understand at a glance for viewers of your page or collaborators is really helpful. And so that's pretty hard to do in Confluence today. And then the last part is just around efficiency. So you just lose a lot of time making decisions or planning next steps just due to the amount of effort that I said that you have to go through to do that context switching. So in this case, you're using multiple tools, but if you update a value or something changes in the chart, it's the static image. And so it doesn't change with the data as it's changing. And so that's something that is really kind of a pain point for customers as well. All right, so I have 4 little videos I'm going to play from you, and these were created by my design partner, who we've been working on this project together for about a year. So they're about 1.5 minutes each, but they'll really walk you through the real functionality. And these aren't screenshots. This is actually live, like on our own instance internally that we've been testing. And so you get to really see how it works within the product.
Okay, so May is working on putting together this monthly campaign performance report, and it's time to add some numbers to it to communicate out to the team. So she starts by copying and pasting a table of data in from Google Sheets, and it's got all the data she needs. And so she goes ahead and, using this insert chart button, adds a chart directly to her Confluence page. So now you can see it started out as a bar chart, and that's great, but she's interested in seeing what she can get out of these other chart types that are available. And in the end, she ends up deciding that a bar chart is exactly what she needs for this first one. And so you can also select which of these specific data series to include. And in this case, the last column, the source column, contains just a bunch of links out to the sources of this data. And so she is opting to omit that from this chart because it's not relevant and it's not data to be graphed. And so we're pretty close now, but before we are done with this graph, May would like to add a chart title. And so for that, she gives it this title here. And then we also want to give it a y-axis label. And you can see these changes added in live time to the chart itself. And so in this case, we're going to call the y-axis views in thousands. Great. And so I'll do one more thing to this. I'll just make it a little bit wider so it pulls a little bit more attention. And that's it. We've made our first chart.
Awesome. So that's part 1 of just creating a chart from data and table. Part 2 is creating another chart from the same table.
Okay, so now May has added her first chart to the page. And what she'd like to do now is add a few more to drill even deeper into this data. So what she'll do in order to do that is add a layout to the page to give those charts a place to live. And then using the same original data source, she'll add another chart to the page. In this case, we just want to focus on one of the series at a time. And first, that will be web. So I'll go ahead and change this to just include web as a data series. And I'd also like to use a line graph in this case to just really show the trend line. A few more changes I'll make because we're focusing on just one chart. I'll turn the legend off and reflect that focus in the chart's title instead. So I'll change the chart title to web reach specifically between these years. And again, I'll change the y-axis to views in thousands. Great. So that looks good. I'll do one more little stylistic change, which is to smooth the lines. And that's just a personal preference. And so I will close up that configuration panel. And now what's nice is that what I can do is just cut this chart and paste it anywhere on the page. So it's easy to move these around and reformat as I see fit. And then another shortcut that is really useful is that I can just, instead of going through those steps over and over and adding a new chart each time, what what I can do is copy a chart that's close to the same configuration that I need and just paste it, create new instances of the same chart over and over again. And so now what I'll do is just change this to include TV as a data series rather than web. And then again, I'll change the title to reflect that focus. So this will be TV reach, and that chart is done. And then I'll do the same here for this chart. So instead of web, I want to focus on print. I'll remove web here, and I will change the title to represent that change. Great. And now that's it.
All right, we got two more. Go a little bit deeper into this feature. So this is editing chart.
May has now added her first chart, as well as 3 more focused charts on the same data. When she finds out from a coworker that she missed somehow from the Excel a full year of data, and it is important data, so it needs to be included. So what she can do is, without needing to make changes individually to each of these charts, she can just return to the original data source, which they all share, and add in that one row of missing data. And what you can see is that the change was reflected immediately in all of these charts. So you can see 2011 is included here, as well as now in each of these smaller charts.
And then last one.
May has now completed her chart making journey and is ready to share this page more broadly. And at this point, the table is actually not the most important piece of information. Everything in this table is already being communicated through these charts. And so what she'd like to do is she'd like to hide this table somewhere that it isn't so aggressively in your face, so that her readers can really focus on the way that she's visually communicating. So she goes ahead and cuts that table. And here you can see in the interim, all these charts appear to break. But what's great is that she can now insert and expand and nest the table inside of that. And we can see all of our charts have returned to the exact state that they had been configured to before. And so I will label this data source, and I'm ready to publish. So I go ahead and publish this page, and now I get to see all of my hard work.
There we go. All right. So well, we'll leave questions for that at the end. I'm just going to show you one slide in between our Q&A. So when are all these features coming out? So these are things that we've been working on here for a while and are all pretty close to rolling out. So all of these, save indicator, findable drafts, page status, and table visualization should be coming to you in Q1, so at the beginning of the year. They'll kind of be spread out throughout Q1, and we're really excited to kind of get these in your hands and start to have you guys use them, give us feedback, and hopefully improve your creation process as this wider initiative around fearless creation. So with that, I'm done talking, but let me know what questions can I answer for all of you.
Go ahead, Matthias.
Yeah, I just have one question about, I guess right now the tables and charts all have to be on the same page, at least for the initial version. Or planning to also reuse that on other pages also.
So one thing that we have built into this is being able to include those in excerpts. So you can technically use them on other pages. But I think if you were to just copy and paste it onto a different page, it probably would break. But we're building in excerpts to this feature as well.
Yeah.
All right. What else is on your mind?
I have a question for the leaders, to be honest. In the spirit of fearless creation, I have a fearless question. I'm curious what you guys think about the drafts feature, deleting how we define a blank document and the fact that we delete those. Does that seem like a scary thing to you guys? Does that seem like whatever? What's just your perception of that?
Saves me having to clean it up myself.
Oh, great. Okay, so it's a positive. Okay, so it seems positive. Yeah.
I would
Let's see.
challenge you all to take a look in like a space that you create a lot of pages in, whether that's your personal space, maybe is a good place, or a team space, and just check out how many drafts you actually have. I think is really interesting, which actually you can't actually do that in a space yet because this feature isn't live. So you have to go to your drafts in the recents dropdown, but I think one thing that was really interesting for me as working as a PM on this project was I didn't think I had a lot of drafts that I had like abandoned over time, but there was a graveyard that definitely needed to be cleaned up with tons and tons and tons of like empty or untitled drafts. I don't even know what I was thinking at that time that I like had a page over and just closed it. But yeah, definitely would challenge you guys to check out your own draft potential graveyard.
Mine are embarrassing. Like I was looking after we talked about drafts the other day, Sam. I like went and looked. I was like, are you kidding me? Have I done that in the 3 years I've been here?
Oh. Where one thing that we have found as we've been testing this feature internally is so blank drafts won't appear in the page tree or any of those other places. But if they meet the standard of technically being a non-blank draft, so maybe they have a title or they have a few words or meet a restriction change. One thing that's been really interesting is that we have noticed that there are, at least internally, quite a few of what we would call useless drafts. And so technically they have content, but they're probably not anything anyone would ever want to go back and see. And so we're working through some last polish around kind of how to help people deal with that, because we don't want to delete anything that has content because data loss is horrible. So we're avoiding that, but trying to figure out what's the best way to give you like quick tools to be able to quickly delete drafts without having to, like, if you do it today, you have to actually go into the editor of that draft, then go into the more menu, then click delete, then it takes you like back to home, and then you have to navigate back to the space you were in. So there's like a lot of work with that we don't want to put on our users. And so we're working through things like quick actions of being able directly in the page tree to just with one click be able to delete, and thinking through other ways that potentially we can kind of make that experience really good. But curious what you guys think about that topic of, like, as you look through your drafts, you might find you also have a lot of what we define as like these useless drafts. And yeah, just your thoughts on anything that you think would be helpful for potentially you as a user being able to help clean those things up without that feeling like a burden.
I'm just thinking mostly about the age, I think so. So I think everything which is older than, I don't know, 2 weeks and it's only a draft, I have the feeling I will never get back to it. Or
yeah. How we're pulling data around a useless draft and like defining it is we looked at our own useless drafts once we turned this on, and what we found was like anything that was either untitled, but maybe had a restriction change or just had like a little bit of content, like a word or two, less than 250 characters was our definition. So untitled and less than 250 characters and older than 30 days, we kind of deem as like a useless draft. Anything that has a title and less than 250 characters of content that's older than 30 days, that seems to be like a useless draft. And then anything that is titled and blank and older than 30 days would also kind of fit that definition. But yeah, if you guys have any feedback on any other, like as you look through your drafts and kind of notice some of those probably useless drafts, if you see any other patterns for things and how you create and the types of drafts that you're like, yeah, no, I would never go back and like use this, I wish this was just gone. If you have any of that type of feedback outside of like that definition I just gave of a useless draft, we'd love to hear it. Because we really want to make sure that when we roll this out, you know, we're not making it harder for you to find pages or find drafts. We want that page tree to still feel like really clean in the rest of Confluence as well, while making it really easy to start, pause, and resume working within Confluence.
Just thinking about that, how does a draft that doesn't have a page title show up in the page tree with that new setup of things?
So if we go back and look at our definition of blank drafts. So a blank draft has to have all of 5 of these things. So if you have no title, but you had like maybe just a restrictions change, or you had an emoji, or you added like a word or a space into the actual body of that draft, technically it's not blank according to.
Right. What I'm meaning though is like you said that drafts are going to show up in the page tree for you, right?
Yep.
So how does a draft that doesn't have a title appear in the page trees?
Oh, I see what you're saying. It would appear as untitled.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be really interesting to see how, like, this is a really good baseline definition for a blank draft, right? Like something you've opened and like never touched and abandoned. But I bet you anything, and I'm just kind of speculating here, that people are going to want to configure their definition, their company definition of what is a blank draft. Like some admins will want to be like, well, think about these blank drafts. Like also, even if it has 1 or 2 characters in it, it can still be a draft. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yep.
I'm just curious how this is going to go. So this is fascinating to me.
Yeah, I think we're really anxious for that feedback as well. And we imagine that is like that people are going to have the experience of drafts don't meet this blank draft definition, but they also are not helpful. And so outside of allowing someone to be able to change the definition of the blank draft, being able to quickly be able to adjust and clean out those things very quickly and seamlessly so that it's still a really good experience. I think there's a question in the chat. What is about inherited restrictions in draft? Can you explain a little bit more by what you mean by that?
Yes, I'd say I have some customers who have used Confluence a lot, and the first thing what they do, they put like a restriction on any kind of page for viewing or so.
Yep.
And when they create a sub page, it gets all the restriction from the parent. So, and when they have drafts, what's happening to them?
Yeah, so I think the same thing would happen whether or not it's blank or not, it will appear in the page tree. So if that child draft under a restricted page has any type of content, it would appear, but it maintains all the same restrictions as it does today. So that child would still like have those restrictions, I think, in place. And also just like another quick like refresh around who can see drafts. Is that you have to be the creator of the draft or specifically invite someone who has opened that draft in the editor for it to appear in their page tree or in their across Confluence for them, all those places.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, one question for you guys. So when you first see this, you see this draft lozenge here. Try to think back before I just told you how everything works. I know someone asked the question, like, who can see the drafts? What was your first impression? Like, did you expect that to be just you? Did you expect everyone, say, in like a team space would be able to see that? Like, what was your first initial thought around that? If anyone wants to share.
I asked that question. My first initial thought was, oh, hopefully it's only visible to me because it's my draft and it's my safe space kind of.
Yeah.
On the same time, I can also see value that it's also visible to others. When I remember some company meetings where just someone created the page while the meeting started and like everyone went to that page. You can still share the link then, and I think still then everyone can access it.
Yeah. Anyone else?
I'll say that I expected it just to be available to the people who are collaborating on the item.
Yeah.
I don't know if it makes sense to have administrators being able to see it as well, just from a cleanup perspective. But if you guys are handling a lot of like, I'm just thinking of the case where you have an employee who has drafts that have been abandoned, and I'm not talking blank ones, but the ones that don't meet that criteria and they're no longer with the company anymore, those are still going to just sit there and no one knows that they exist.
Yeah, what would you expect to happen? Like, what would you expect an admin to be able to do in that case? Like delete them or be able to like make them so that other people could use them?
Both, either or.
Mhm.
Either being able to re-sign or delete them, one of the two.
Yeah. Yeah, that Tracy, you said that's true today though, right? What do you mean by that? Tracy's our content designer who's been working.
Yeah, so we're not really changing any of the ways that drafts behave. So if I create 50 draft pages in Confluence and then I quit, those pages still exist as drafts today. They're just not manifesting in the page tree. So, I think if the admin felt that was a problem, this feature doesn't change that problem, was my point.
Yeah. I think it's a great question to ask though. And as part of Fearless Creation, like I'll say, one of our big focuses is around the drafting experience. So this is like a bit of part one of making those drafts more visible and easy to find, but the actual experience of drafting and the publishing flow, those are all things that are part of Fearless Creation, where we want people to feel really comfortable putting like those early pieces of work or unpolished work, things that people typically we find maybe draft in Google Docs or Apple Notes or a competitive tool because they know it's private, and then move it to Confluence either when it's ready for prime time or they're ready to collaborate. We want to create just a really friendly environment for people to feel comfortable drafting in Confluence. Cool. Well, I think we have about 10 minutes left. So I think we can do one or two more questions. And then at the end here to wrap up, Rennie, our marketing lead that works with our team, has a little bit of a plug for something that's upcoming as well. But any last questions on any of these features?
Maybe one note still on who can see the draft. Like maybe I would like to know then who can see the draft. So who was some collaborator? Not sure if you thought about somebody in the, maybe probably in the draft, click on who can see this or so.
Yeah. Do you mean within the actual editor itself or in like some of these views where you're seeing drafts? Like,
I think for me, the editor would be fine and there's more space to display it somewhere, I guess, but
yeah. How would you do that today in the product? So if you wanted to see who was collaborating on a draft, do you have an expectation? Do you know how that works today? I guess is the question.
I just know which, like who's actively on that page, like just the names or
like
icons.
The avatars.
Yeah.
That's great feedback because we're also working on making things like that, I think, a bit more visible. But like if you wanted to check on that today, just as a tip between now and when we work on some of these things is if you go into the permissions, you can see who has like editing access or permissions. The thing that's really difficult is that if you were to just share the URL of the draft today, you don't have any control over it. And we don't do a great job of communicating who can use that link. So like as the creator, you might just grab that link and paste it in Slack to a coworker and expect that. I don't know what you expect. Actually, what would you expect in that case? If you grab the URL and paste it in Slack and send it to one person, like who would you expect would be able to get into that draft?
Depending on the restrictions of the parent page, I guess, like,
Yeah.
or of the page, the restrictions I've already set. Maybe.
What if you didn't make any restriction changes? You didn't change anything from how it is default and just shared that draft link.
I think just still the inheriting from the parent, I guess. Like if there's a parent, which
Yeah. How it works today is anyone who has access to that space, editing access within that space, would be able to then edit that draft. So we don't do a great job of making that super clear, but that's something that we also want to improve, because yeah, like you could share that link with one person, but then they could go share that in like a public channel or a team channel. And maybe you weren't actually wanting that to happen. Like as the creator of that page, we don't set the expectation well that that's something that can happen. And I think it's a bit difficult to control that today in the current product. So that kind of teases some of the stuff that's upcoming, where we talk about wanting to give people more control and transparency over, you know, the creation process. There's some really great features that I think you guys are going to really like that we're working on and kind of finishing up some of the last bit of usability testing with and things like that. But really excited to share more Fearless Creation with you guys. So this is not the last time you will see me. I will be back many times over the next year. There are a lot of projects that fit within Fearless Creation, but these are the first 4 that you'll be able to see here coming in the beginning of the year. So that I'll wrap up. Rennie, I'll stop sharing my screen. Would you like to jump in and do a plug?
Sure. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us in this session. It's been really great just to hear everyone's comments and feedback. Also, just for some context, I'm a newer marketing person at Atlassian, so it's great to kind of be able to chat with you all. Also, a lot of your names look very familiar, and we've been engaging on community, so nice to you know, match names to faces and all of that good stuff. I can share my screen. The main thing that I just wanted to mention, and because you all are so engaged on the community, you probably have already seen this, but we are right now running a Confluence holiday workshop. And so really just wanted to plug this and mention, please stay engaged on all of our different activities we have going, you know, comment and participate. We have Mad Libs, some team gratuity options. We have new branded header images that you can use on your Confluence pages. We also included some stuff from K15T. And I know, so yeah, one of the K15T folks are on the call too. So that's kind of the gist of what's going on over the next few weeks. So I'll send the link around for this page, but please participate, give us any feedback. We always love to hear from you and just see all the great work that you're doing.
Awesome. I have one final question. Throw your answers in the chat. Out of the 4 features that we showed today, which I'll bring up the slide that names them all for you guys, what are you most excited to try yourself? Nice, we got some page statuses. Ooh, guys love page status. It's good. Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, thank you everyone for your time. Anything, Mandy, from you to wrap up or plug for the next time around?
Just wanted to thank you guys. This is the last Products at Insider of the year. So thank you so much for coming. I love you guys, you leaders, you're so close to my heart, and I'll see you doing all of our other fun holiday activities we're doing in the community with you over the next few weeks. But yeah, we have something coming up in January. We'll have I think we have at least 1 session, maybe 2 lined up in January, and then we have 2 lined up for February. So this is just going to keep coming and coming and coming. And thank you so much. You guys are great. And remember, the stuff that's talked about today hasn't been released yet, so it's fine to talk amongst yourselves and amongst other leaders, but let's not go put LinkedIn posts up about this. That's all. All right, cool. Well, thank you guys very much for coming. And thank you so much to the Confluence team for being such huge supporters of community. We love you guys, and everyone here is awesome. So have a great rest of your year. That's it for Product Insider for 2021. We'll see you next year. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.